all the diseases I mentioned, all of those health conditions I mentioned, every one of them, any one of them, or every one of them could be measured in the same 40 seconds. By looking at the central nervous system, we're looking at 15 million data elements a minute, where NLP is producing about 110 data elements a minute. So if I build an algorithm for Alzheimer's disease in English, and I go to Japan with it, I validate that model there, but the algorithm is very, 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 very much the same. You could actually use the Samsung Watch to capture the audio and give a response that could either go to your doctor or come back to you. We're monitoring things like depression and anxiety, but we're also monitoring levels of aggression in the room.
What if your voice could tell doctors what your body hasn't yet discovered? Today I'm talking to Henry O'Connell, CEO and co-founder of Canary Speech, a company turning human voice into one of the most powerful diagnostic tools in the modern healthcare. Henry shares how an 8-hour conversation in a bagel shop led to groundbreaking technology that detects diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer, and depression, all through subtle changes in how we speak. We explore how AI analyzes over 2,500 vocal biomarkers every few milliseconds, why your smartwatch may soon serve as a personal doctor, and what this means for the future of early detection and mental health. It's a fascinating look at the intersection of AI, medicine, and humanity, and a reminder that innovation often begins with a simple conversation. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And now, enjoy the conversation. Welcome to an hour on innovation, Henry. Thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you. It's a delight to be here with you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so before we jump into the conversation, can you tell a little bit about your background and how you started your company?
Well, thank you. The company itself started 9 years ago in a bagel shop. My business partner, Jeff Adams, and I sat down for what we thought would be an extended lunch. Ended up being about 8 hours of time together. But the story goes back a number of years because Jeff and I met 40 years earlier. 40 years ago, I was at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, and Jeff was at the NSA. I was doing research in a neurological research group. Jeff was doing work for our country, building mathematical models that would de-encrypt spy messages. He'd still be there, to be honest, if he could be. But that work, that mathematical work that he was doing, is fundamental to and foundational to speech and language analysis. Jeff, after leaving the NSA, worked with Ray Kurzweil to develop the first natural language processing tools, speech-to-text tools. He then went on and led the team that built Dragon Naturally Speaking, which is the most successful medical dictation platform ever built in the planet. Microsoft purchased Nuance about 5 years ago for $19.5 billion. I mean, a very well received product. He built the same thing for speech to text for legal. He did many other fundamental things. And when Amazon was looking for a team to build the Amazon Echo, they simply bought the company Jeff was in. And Jeff led the team to build the Amazon Echo, which we know as Alexa. And so a wonderful career in speech and language. And he and I were in this bagel shop chatting about a number of things that we could do. We wanted to work together. We had never worked together, but been friends for 40 plus years. And after the many things that he thought would be interesting to do, I asked him a really simple question. It's one that people like Jeff never ask of themselves. He's just wonderful man that spends his entire life doing for others. But I asked him, after a career as you have had, what's left on your table? What's on the path in front of you? what is something you haven't done that you always wanted to do? And that takes him out of his comfort zone because he's often doing things for others. And he said to me, well, I always wanted to apply speech and language to the analysis of human condition and disease. And I said, well, why don't we do that? And so the technology to do that didn't really exist. And for 25, 30 years, people had been trying to do that unsuccessfully. And so Canary Speech approached it in an entirely different way. And from a technology standpoint, it's now 14 issued patents and 12 pending patents later. We actually looked at not what people speak, but how the central nervous system creates language. And we look at 2,548 features in speech every 10 milliseconds. And we process that in real time in conversational communication. So that's how Canary Speech got started. This wonderful man, Jeff Adams, myself, having been friends for many years, we had the opportunity to work together. And we wanted to seize that opportunity, but we wanted to do something that was meaningful. We wanted to do something that, if you will, would give back. And so that's how Canary Speech was born. Canary in the coal mine is the concept. We want to be an early warning sign. We want to provide information to clinical teams that can help them in the process of determining and diagnosing illness.
That's a great story. You just had a lifelong friend basically having conversation, and out of that, this company was born. That's amazing. And plus, you're both passionate about it. You both come from science, right? Math and biology, I guess. And yeah, that's awesome. So this is a very complicated. This is not an easy application, basically. So what were some of the challenges that you had in the beginning when you were trying to come up with figure out the specific problem? Like, maybe let's start with what problems clinicians were having that you were trying to address first, and how you could apply this technology to help them solve it.
So you're right. It's really a funny paradigm, because speech and language is something that's natural. We do it almost thoughtlessly. It's very, very complex, but I don't think even a young child or an old person like myself doesn't think of the complexity of language and speech. We just do it. And we do it flawlessly under most circumstances. There are certain diseases that impair that, but in a couple hundred different languages and dialects, maybe hundreds of different dialects, people are speaking all over the world and communicating with one another. And it's the most natural interaction people have. Even strangers, you'll say hello to them on an elevator, or depending on where you are and your personality, even on a street. And we communicate with one another. And so that's kind of that end of the paradigm, which is, hey, happens all the time and it's natural, and people do it without thought. But on the other side, we're looking at these complex elements and features of speech, not what the words are, because words are subjective in nature. We can learn and choose words. We can train ourselves to speak more fluently or elegantly, even in different languages. But how those words are created are common across all populations. The central nervous system is controlling the vocal cords, the power of our respiration, the rate of our respiration, the duration of our respiration, how we move our tongue, our cheeks, our mouth. All of those things are the orchestra of speech. And the central nervous system is the conductor. And so the central nervous system, the most complex motor function that we have, or speech is the most complex motor function, and the central nervous system is controlling all of that self-consciously. So you and I are not thinking about, what do I have to do with my vocal cords in order for this to be more exciting for them? How do I raise the excitement level of this? We don't think that at all. We're just talking, and our central, self-consciously, our brain is doing all of this stuff. Because of the nature of how it's created, the previous work had been measuring what words were actually created. But it's not how it's created. It's created with the central nervous system. And the central nervous system is impacted by a whole range of different types of illnesses and diseases. The most obvious ones are progressive neurological diseases. Huntington's, Parkinson's, MS, Alzheimer's, mild cognitive impairment. All of these progressive neurological diseases impact on our ability to speak. And if that's happening, what our central nervous system in our brain is doing first is trying to keep our speech normal. But the path to keep it normal is not the normal path. And we're capable of measuring the not normal path for a specific disease. So a specific area of the brain is impacted, Parkinson's, if you will. And it's finding a way to keep our communication, our speech as normal as possible. And as the disease progresses, we lose the capacity to do that in Parkinson's and in Alzheimer's and in MS and in other diseases. So at first, there was a recognition that things that impact on our ability to form words, the actual subunits of words, 2,548 biomarkers, things that impact on that could be measured using machine learning. You could train an algorithm to recognize that. And that was how we approached it. Some of the difficulties were associated with it had not been done before. What had been done before was using speech to text, NLP, natural language processing. They would then analyze what words had been spoken. And in an Alzheimer's disease, they would say, well, as Alzheimer's progresses, the larger words begin to disappear. People use more filler noises, like ahs and other things. They put in fillers because their brain is working a little bit slower. And for Alzheimer's disease, if you have a large enough sample, weeks or years of language, and you could compare it to where a person was to get a standard against it, you could actually maybe understand that they had Alzheimer's disease. But where they were with Alzheimer's and how far they had progressed was anybody's guess. By looking at the central nervous system, we're looking at 15 million data elements a minute, where NLP is producing about 110 data elements a minute.
Wow.
And so the dramatic density of the information we're looking at is itself impressive. And then the fact that machine learning wants a big data set, it laughs about 110 words. It doesn't care at all about that. But if you give it 15 million, it's like your pig in mud. It's swimming around, it's enjoying itself. It's any great dog that goes out on a rainy day and comes back dirty. So all of those things were things that we kind of, in the first couple of years, we had to relearn, because the traditions in the field were to use read speech and were to use defined structure coming out of speech pathology, which is great for speech pathology, but really not so great for speech analysis and biomarkers. And so we kind of had to unlearn those things. And we learned that by experimentation. And we realized that we needed conversational speech, where you and I could be on this call. I could be talking. You could be in the role of a clinician, and at the same time analyzing my speech. Just, it didn't matter what I spoke about, because my central nervous system is making in all of it, So I'm measuring how the central nervous system creates language, not the words that are made.
If you are enjoying this episode, it would mean a lot if you like, subscribe, or leave a quick comment. It really helps more people discover the show, explore these ideas, and be part of the conversation. Your support makes it all possible. So thank you for being here. So can we explain to the audience who maybe don't know, and to me also, what are those vocal biomarkers are?
Sure. There are some that are quite simple. For instance, if you take the vocal cords, which everybody understands contributes to speech, the speed at which they're moving contribute to which words are being formed, and what are the tonal ranges of those words. Like I can start out low and go up very high. So that has to do with how fast the vocal cords are vibrating. So we're measuring elements of the vibrational characteristics of the vocal cords, which relate to their actual speed of motion, but also how fast that speed is changing and how quickly that speed recovers. Those can tell us things about a disease state that are specific to and are identifiers, cues of a particular disease.
I see.
Additionally, we have our lungs contribute to it, and the speed of our lungs, the power of our lungs, how self-consciously we're being told to create or form things. There are things like jitter that tie into jitter and flutter that tie into different elements of speech. These are the biomarkers we're looking at. And then we look at, in every case, we look at first and second and third order derivatives of that, because those reflect how they're changing over time. And we do that every 10 milliseconds. We actually use a 25 millisecond window in which we collect 2,548 different elements. And then we slide that 10 milliseconds and we overlap and collect another set, slide it 10 milliseconds. We do that for 40 seconds is a normal sample for us. About 12.5 million data elements are collected in that time.
Oh, wow.
And it's streaming to our web services.
Just 40 seconds. And
Just
then
40 seconds, yeah.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Okay, so I guess it's kind of like basically your sounds that people produce, right? And it could be affected by mental conditions, some diseases, maybe your emotions, maybe your like stress level or whatever. And all those are called biomarkers that you have some sort of library of and you match in against when you're analyzing the sounds that when
so
people speak.
what we do is we participate in a partnership with a clinical group, like the Harvard Beth Israel or Hackensack Meridian or the National Institutes in Japan and Tala Hospital in Ireland. And so different clinical teams that are analyzing and are experts at diagnosing particular diseases. We partner with them. And in the process, we gather audio from the patient as they're engaging with the clinical team. The clinical team, the result of their interaction is a diagnosis. They'll diagnose that a patient has Parkinson's early stage, or they'll diagnose that the patient has Huntington's disease but hasn't manifested that disease yet. So they give us that diagnosis, which is called the ground truth, by an expert team of people. And then we have an audio that was taken at the exact same time, the conversation they were having with the clinical team, the patient. We then extract all these features, 12 to 15 million features, and we use machine learning to correlate that feature set with the diagnosis and the labels, if you will, that the doctor and clinical team gave us. That correlation becomes an algorithm. Now, we talked about these being biomarkers. People throw around the word biomarker a lot, but a biomarker, if you associate it with the genome, if I have the alleles for green eyes, which I do, I have green eyes. If someone in Germany has the alleles for green eyes, regardless, and I was born ancestrally, come from Ireland. This person ancestrally comes from, Germany. We have two different populations of people, but we have the same allele in our genome. I would know from just seeing what their alleles were without having met that person. I would know they had green eyes. It's a biomarker. And there are many other biomarkers like that. Well, words are not a biomarker. That's an obvious thing. All one has to do is go to France and it's that English is not a biomarker in France. Okay? It's just, it's a barely understood thing and somewhat insulting. And But at the same time, French is not, if you go to Germany, it never was. So words themselves don't transcend populations, and language doesn't transcend populations. However, the biomarkers that we're looking at, the vibrational characteristics of how language is formed and the element of the vocal cords and how the central nervous system controls that's common across all populations. So if I build an algorithm for Alzheimer's disease in English and I go to Japan with it, I validate that model there, but the algorithm is very, 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 very much the same. Because the Alzheimer's and the damage to the central nervous system and how language is impaired, even though it's Japanese versus English, we see that the algorithms are very close. And then we validate and we prove that they are. With a population of Japanese, with a clinical team there. We just published a paper with the National Institutes in Japan in Lancet on mild cognitive impairment. It was the first place we built that algorithm. But then when we took that algorithm and brought it back here to the States, we didn't have to bring it back, it's on the web. But we used that same algorithm as the starting point for developing mild cognitive impairment in English. And we're doing that in Dutch right now, and we're doing that in Arabic. So that's a biomarker. Okay. Transcends a population, is common across groups, that type of thing.
Okay. Okay, I see. It makes sense now. Thank you for explanation. I think it's good to understand what it is, because many people, like I first thought that this is about language and how people speak, but then I was immediately thinking, what about accent? What about people who speak multiple languages? What about, and language changes, right?
Sure.
Like I have native Russian language, but Russian language 500 years ago was totally different. I wouldn't be able to speak to those people. So
that's like people living in Iceland that speak an ancient Norwegian language.
Right.
Yeah. They've been isolated for 200 years.
Yeah. So now it makes sense. It's more like characteristics of the sounds and how we produce them and things like that. Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned that you're focusing on like mental diseases and things like that. Can you mention a few other conditions maybe on the spectrum that you're trying to address with this product?
So today, broadly speaking, we're working in 4 areas. Progressive neurological diseases, which include things like Huntington's and Parkinson's and MS and schizophrenia and bipolar. We've launched Parkinson's and Huntington's disease. We're getting ready to launch MS, multiple sclerosis. In the cognitive area, we have in multiple languages, we have mild cognitive impairment, which is a precursor to advanced cognitive problems. And we have Alzheimer's disease models built. So we're analyzing for both of those. And then in the behavioral health area, we have a range of models. We have a behavioral health model that looks at generally where's an individual's behavioral health. We do the same thing for cognitive health. But then we have anxiety and depression models that are commercialized in multiple languages, Spanish and English and Japanese. And then we also have fatigue and energy levels, because individuals that are overly tired or fatigued can both have cognitive problems and they can have anxiety problems. Deprived sleep deprivation leads to other illnesses. And then the 4th area is childhood diseases, which we started last and started this year in the 9th year of our work. And we're doing ADHD and autism right now, along with behavioral health, anxiety and depression for children. So that work is ongoing in multiple countries. We're working in the UK, in the US, and in South America on different diseases, as well as Japan and Asia and Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi and Arabic. So the work is ongoing. We currently have 16 current clinical studies: PTSD, pulmonary tract infections, COPD, the autistic and ADHD as well as some additional fine-tuning Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. So we're looking at different stages of those diseases to better like hairpin, where a person is in the progression of their disease. So different types of things.
Are this so the product itself, is it like a wearable device, or do I have to go to clinic and get tested for this, or is it done somehow seamlessly while I'm talking to my physician? How does it work?
So pretty much wherever you can capture audio and process that to the web. And we run in a secure environment, high trust, ISO standards certified and audited. But wherever you can capture audio over a video conference like we're having right now, or over a telephone, or in a clinic in a smartphone, or at home using that app, using our app in a smartphone or a tablet. We also capture audio using Samsung watches. So as a wearable device, that's our first entry into wearables, where you could actually use the Samsung watch to capture the audio and give a response that could either go to your doctor or come back to you. So most of the time we're clinically based, and the information we're developing or the scores we're deriving from the audio are given to doctors and clinical teams. However, we are going home with patients now, so we're taking point-to-point care to a more continuous care monitoring system. In hospital rooms, we're launching our product with AI-enhanced patient intelligence in a room, where they're monitoring, is a patient in bed? Are they walking around the room? Have they fallen? Did the nurse or the doctor wash their hands when they came in the room? They have intelligent systems that monitor that. Well, those intelligent systems also have Canary Speech on them. And we're monitoring things like depression and anxiety, but we're also monitoring levels of aggression in the room. One of the serious problems we're facing in America is that nurses and doctors are being assaulted by either a family member or a patient who gets anxious or angry about the care they're getting, or that they're sick. And so we're monitoring different levels of anxiety, different levels of aggression. We're monitoring patients' health and welfare and creating a continuous monitoring of that. Whenever they're talking in the room, as part of an informed consent by the patient, we're actually monitoring how their health is. So we can do it across all those platforms. Speech is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And wherever it's occurring in a conversation with someone, or if you're doing it by yourself in your home, Canary Speech could actually, with your permission, Canary Speech could be measuring your health.
Wow, that's very amazing, because I always look for some sort of devices like this, and it's always interesting, how can I have this like personal doctor basically in my phone or in my watch or in my home, whatever, close to me. Like I can take a device and measure my blood pressure really quick, or temperature. Same thing here, and I can assess my level of stress today. Should I go to work or should not? Because I might be yelling at people.
There's Canary Speech.
There we go.
Yep.
Wow, that's great. And it's available in like App Store, and you can download it.
Yeah. And it can be downloaded. We don't sell it to the general public right now, but there are organizations and teams, veterans, for instance, that are using it, and we build a specific deployment of it unique to them. And then they can go on the App Store, download it. They put credentials in that give them access to it. So it's not random. It's all controlled, but it provides individuals. And there is consumer health type of things that are outside of the medical assessments, just the consumer health ones that are available. But generally, it's available. It's on every device, Android, Apple, Samsung devices, pretty ubiquitously available. Okay?
So I guess I can talk to my physician and see if they have subscription, or they can buy it maybe, or somehow get it, and we can benefit from it. That's great.
Yeah. So we're rolling out today. We've rolled out, and it's being used in a number of clinics, but Microsoft has partnered with us to roll this out with their healthcare systems that they offer and support in hospitals. Samsung is doing the same thing. LG is doing this. Global Med is doing this with us. and then a number of hospitals work very closely with us in advancing the technology and the reach of it.
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, this is to help doctors diagnose the condition, right? It's not like providing treatment suggestions or anything like that.
So our product is considered a clinical decision support tool in the space of things that doctors would have in their hands. And another obvious clinical decision support tool is like a blood pressure cuff,
Right.
So we're giving, of the multitude of information, the array of information that a doctor or a clinician has, clinical team member has, to make a diagnosis, we're one of those pieces. We just happen to be a very easy one. It's non-invasive, it's non-intrusive, it's listening to a conversation they're having, and the information in real time will come to their phone. 40 seconds after we do it, milliseconds after a 40-second sample, they're getting a range of different things. All the diseases I mentioned, all of those health conditions I mentioned, every one of them, any one of them, or every one of them could be measured in the same 40 seconds.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. It's incredible.
That's very fast. And what kind of feedback are you getting from those doctors who use it? What they say?
It's very often a wow experience, because when you talk to them, they're doing this all the time. When they're with their patients, they're using their own machine learning tool to understand certain conditions. They'll say to a person, "How are you doing today? Last time we spoke, you had elevated anxiety level." And the individual might say, "Well, I'm doing fine." But the clinical team, the doctor, knows they're not. They can hear they're not, and what we're doing is validating what they're hearing. And so they have for years been experts at picking up those cues. They've trained themselves to do that. And what we're doing is giving them an objective ability to do that they just hold in their hands, and the information is with them while they're talking to the patient. So that's a very kind of nice support tool.
Yeah, I can see that. So, are you thinking beyond medical application for this tool? Maybe some other areas in human life that can be applied to support and help make decisions in other, like I could think maybe like education, maybe like criminal investigations, like whether people lie or not, or maybe at work, if somebody is like, trying to be tricky or sneaky, or are they being honest, things like that.
We're pretty focused right now on medical application area. It's the hardest area to be there. The requirements are higher, the bar is higher. The data security requirements are the highest in the world. And we're pretty well focused in that area. We do, with our aggression model, which has its application in healthcare, it also has applications in places like, dangerous environments like prisons and other places. We have been approached by Homeland Security, or even the airplane industry, where there's been a lot of aggressive behavior. Well, at check-in, if the individual talking with the check-in personnel is very, very agitated and very aggressive, they know that, but they don't have an objective measurement of it. We could actually objectively measure it and indicate that this is a red level of alert. There's a situation here, regardless of where that is, if that's in a prison or if that's in a hospital or that's somewhere else. But the primary focus of the company is on expanding the number and complexity of the medical diseases and human conditions that we cover, adding additional languages to that, deploying in additional countries. And so Arabic is going to be a lot of fun. We're very excited about the work we're doing in the Middle East, that community. I was in Guatemala last week, and we're deploying in South America. The tool is wonderful because a lot of people are remote, and there aren't as many clinical centers. And so they'll do a lot more with video conferencing or with telephone calls. People will call into clinics. So our tool offers to provide a much richer amount of information for a clinical person to be able to make a decision about a patient. And that's important. Reaching individuals regardless of where they are in the world. I personally grew up very, very poor. My dad died, as I mentioned, when I was a very young man. And I don't think I mentioned that. My dad passed away when I was 9. My mom raised 5 children, had her father living with us, my grandfather. My personal feelings about this is that regardless of where a person by chance happened to be born in the world, they still should have good health care. They should have good food. They should have good education, all the things that we take for granted sometimes in America. We're a great nation. I love our nation. But, you just have to go to Guatemala for a week to realize that we're living at 2 different levels here. And my hope is that in this one little area of life, healthcare, that maybe we can make a difference. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the most complex and area that needs really help, really valuable for them to identify and help people more than anything else. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then, so some people may say you're going to listen to patients, to people and identify some conditions with them in terms of privacy and security. I know you mentioned that you have top level security and whatever protocols you have to do. But can you say a little bit about how you ensure that the data is not leaking or privacy is not breached and things like that?
So at the start of the company, in that bagel shop that we talked about earlier, we decided we would be in the healthcare space. There are certain credentials and certain responsibilities you have to take seriously if you want to be a good partner in healthcare. And companies like ours need to operate at the same standard that a Cleveland Clinic does, or that a Hackensack Meridian Healthcare does. And the truth is, we do. All of our, from how we build our models to how we monitor speech, and how we return scores, all of that is at the same level of data security that a hospital is. And so the data that we capture is de-identified. The information that we have is processed. It flows to us in an encrypted file, is processed and returned in an encrypted file, functioning at high trust level and functioning at both the ISO standards 27001 and 42001, which apply to this particular area of data security, AI for good, those types of things. And so Canary Speech matches and is a partner in the maintenance of the integrity of data in a healthcare environment. We just function at that level. And so it was just part of our genome. It was something we built in from the very start.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So basically, when people talking to me and doing this assessment, basically they don't know that it's me. It's all encrypted and it's all
the truth is, we don't even know
anonymized.
you.
Yeah.
So Canary Speech doesn't even know that. The only person who knows who is related to the sample that we got is the doctor you're sitting with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I understand. Okay, and so I have to ask, because this since you talked from the beginning, it's in my mind, and I have to ask. So you know how a lot of people like pets, right? Dogs and cats, and have them at home, and sometimes we can't really communicate with them because they get sick, they get upset or whatever. Especially like my sister, for example, they adopted this abused dog, and it's really sad what has been done to that animal, but it's just sad. And tool like yours, do you think there is a potential to help figure out with animals what's going on with them in those shelters, in homes, in hospitals, and so forth?
So, not our tool particularly, because we don't build it for that. But in the field itself, in this area of technology itself, animals, dogs have 200 plus words or 200 plus things it communicates through language, dog language, if you will. Dolphins probably have more words than we do. And so there's no question at all that one could build a model to recognize what the dog is communicating and translate that, like we do speech to text, translate that to an English text, like it's time for my bone, I
That
don't
would be cool.
tag you bed, or take me out for a walk, or if we don't go out, the poop is going in the corner, that kind of all that. I'm positive that could be done. We're focused, as I said, on human conditions and disease, but we have people will approach us from time to time to say, would you consider applying the technology capabilities that you have developed to listening to recordings of dolphins? That's the big one. And the answer is no. From a practical standpoint, we're pretty busy, so it's not something we're going to do. And then we are looking to try to create an open source resource so that people, if they want to use our capabilities, they could just use our APIs and do whatever they want, but it would not be on our platform. We would create a separate total platform for them to go play. Could it be done? Yes. Pattern recognition, sound. Since we're not paying attention to the word level, we're paying attention to, and would in those animals, to how they're forming that language and words. So could it be done? Yes. Is it a fairly long path in front of it? There'd be some good work to do.
It's probably not the top of priority for humankind yet. But at some point, somebody may be doing something like that.
It'd be fun too.
Yeah.
It'd be fun for someone to do.
Yeah. Okay. So we're coming to an end here. And lastly, I just wanted to ask you about your entrepreneurial journey and leadership and experience. And maybe you have some sort of advice or words of wisdom to somebody who's trying to start a company, a business in AI, something complex like you had to deal with 9-year journey. So what can you tell them how to start and how to go through this?
I think there are maybe 4 pieces, if you don't mind my elaborating.
Sure.
One is that whatever work has been done, recognize that people spent a lot of their life doing that work, but recognize also that it may not be of any help at all. It's just the truth. We always want to think we're standing on the shoulders of great people, but sometimes we're just standing on the ground. So you have to look at what was done and really critically think about whether or not it can contribute to what you're trying to get done. And in our case, the reason we have 14 issued patents is because what was done was an approach that I don't believe will ever be successful. So we made a pivot and went another way. Secondly, people give whenever you ask anyone, they'll tell you that the team that's around you is really important. It could never be more true. What I tell our team is that we're trying to do something that's very difficult, and some even found it impossible. That's okay. That's what startup companies do. They tackle the things that others don't tackle. And I said, in order to get something like that done, I liken it to an example of a horse pull. I once saw a horse pull, and I had someone describe a horse pull. They described it first, and then I went and saw it because I was so fascinated with it. But a horse pull are competitions in which they have 6 horses that are yoked to a weight. It's not a wagon that they're going to pull. It's a flat piece of very heavy something that they have to move on the ground. Any 4 or even 5 of them pulling against the yoke at the same time can't move the thing. They can't get past inertia at rest. It requires that all 6 of them hit the yoke like that. If they do, they overcome inertia at rest and they begin accelerating with this very, very heavy load. Well, that I liken to what we do. They're very difficult things to get done. If they were very simple, it would have been done 20 years ago, you know? So we're trying to do something that's very difficult. And I've got a team with me, and I tell them we have to be equally yoked to this difficult task. But I said, I'll promise you something, that one of the greatest joys of my life is when I look to my right, I see you yoked with me. And I promise you, when you look to your left, I will be yoked there also. And I think that that's what good startup companies are like. They don't have this, starry-eyed leader that is constantly telling them where they need to be. They have a leader who's equally yoked to them, and they're all going to the same place. If you're going to build a good company, particularly a startup company that's tackling difficult, nearly impossible things, do it because you want to be yoked to someone. That's so important. And then I tell them that along the way, we're going to fail. I promise you I'll fail more often than you do. And I promise you I'll never fail to get up. Be willing to fail. If you're not willing to fail, you will never succeed at difficult. It's not possible. Difficult doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you're willing to fall on your face. So number 3, be willing to fail. And then number 4, celebrate everything. Celebrate that you got up. Celebrate that you did something right. Recognize everyone that's doing everything. On a Friday, take 10 minutes and text 3 people who did something amazing this week. Recognize it. And that's what I tell the team. And so we have these texts flying around on Fridays, just thanking people for something they did. So be equally yoked, be willing to fail, and be willing to be grateful for the people you're with. Do that. I think that's going to be a successful company.
Yeah, that's great. This is very powerful, what you just said. And I think people, if they listen carefully, they can take that lesson. You've been doing it for a while, and I think it's worth it. So thank you very much for your wisdom and sharing your story with us. Good luck with the company. I'll keep an eye how is it going, and maybe we can catch up sometime in a year or 2 again and see where things are.
Yeah, please do. Don't ever hesitate. Reach out or text me. Do anything. I'll reach back. Okay?
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Henry. It was a pleasure talking to you, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in. I hope this conversation gave you fresh ideas and inspiration. If so, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to follow or subscribe and leave a quick comment. It helps more people discover this episode. See you next time.